in those conditions. So I have cause for concern.
And I think I would second Mr. Amador's concerns there. I'd like to hear more about that and why the city is taking this position.
With that, I think we need to move to an executive session. So I would like to have us probably somebody to call for a motion for that.
This is Karen. I would move that we go into executive session.
I second.
Just for the sake of clarity here, please keep in mind that if you want to move into executive session for the purpose of seeking legal advice, the motion needs to be very clear as to what you are seeking legal advice on, so that it's in the public record as to the purpose of this executive session. And then I believe the motion should be made, if a motion you might want to amend, but the motion should be made to move into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B for those purposes of receiving legal advice about these the legal advice on the implication of these additional conditions proposed by FRICO.
Well, then
So
would I be allowed to withdraw my motion and then make a new motion, Matt? Sure.
I mean, the motion is not to the floor yet. We did have a second, but I think as long as if you're wanting to withdraw that motion, the second it concurs with that withdrawal, that's fine.
So, Andrew, would you concur in my withdrawal of the motion?
Yes, I concur.
Okay, then great, thanks. Then I'd like to make a new motion that we go into executive session to discuss the legal implications of STUNV as been proposed, and in accordance with CRS, whatever you cited there, Matt.
Yeah, that was CRS 24-6-402 Part 4B.
Okay, CRS 24-6-402 4B.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Mann, can you call for a vote?
Yep. Commissioner Yost?
I approve.
Commissioner Kamak?
No.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Amador?
Yes.
Chairman Popiel?
Yes. Our motion is passed. Our meeting will move to an executive session, and we will reconvene in, let's see, at 7:12 at 7:30. With the chairman.
So at this time, I believe staff has sent out an email link to all the commissioners. What we'll do is we'll basically go off of this Zoom call and onto that Zoom call to have that session, and we'll come back to this one. So the applicant and the viewing audience, if they want to stay on this call, we will all be rejoining this call shortly.
Thank you, Matt. So if the commissioners want to join that other invite.
See you in the other invite. Thank you.
Commissioner Kamak, have you received the invite to the Zoom call meeting for exec session?
I have not. Hey, John. I haven't gotten anything in the email. Let me see, maybe it jumped into my junk box. Hang on. I got it here. Well, no. Yeah, I don't think her stuff keeps getting into my my junk box, and well, how do I do that? Because my okay. Well, I am on the other call.
Commissioner Kamak, you may want to turn your camera and your microphone off. We're still recording this this meeting.
Welcome back, Dennis. I see you.
Okay. Dennis is here. Mr. Yost. Andrew. Karen. Ms. Main, do we have everybody?
It looks like we have everybody.
We will call our Planning Commission back to order. Thank you all for your patience as we stepped away for a few minutes. Ms. Main, are we done with the public comment? I believe there was one person that might have been raising their hand.
Yes, it looks like Abel from the South Adams County Water and Sewer District would like to speak. Let me just unmute him.
Good evening,
Abel, yep, sorry.
members of the commission. Thank you. I just wanted to make a few comments in support of Metro Wastewater's request for the Planning Commission's approval action this evening. South Adams County is working extremely closely with Metro Wastewater and their team that included Brighton, Aurora, Denver, to find a regional solution that benefited all of those public jurisdictions and the customers that they all serve. And we originally were slated to do a project on our own because we had to get flow to Metro Wastewater's new Northern Treatment Plant by 2023. But through this regional effort, we were able to find a solution that benefited really the Northeastern Metro area. In terms of Mr. Douglas's comments, the South Adams has a master plan of all of its service territory, which includes Third Creek flows, which is really along the eastern side of the E470 corridor. And we do have flows or intended pipelines to serve new developments that will be served via the South Adams County wastewater collection system, which will then be distributed to Metro's Northern Treatment Plant via this Second Creek Regional Interceptor. So in short, I just really wanted to offer my acceptance, if you will, for Metro's proposed application before the Planning Commission this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. Ms. Main, any further?
It looks like Todd has his hand up again. So I don't know if he has any other comments or questions he would like to add.
I actually didn't realize I had my hand up, but just a couple things on the end of page 5 and the beginning of page 6 of the letter that we sent are the conditions that were asked about. And then the last 4 pages or 5 pages of the letter are pictures of what happens when a ditch flows out. And these are taken from, it was about 12 years ago in Northern Colorado. A smaller bore 20 feet under the invert of an earthen ditch took the ditch out and did a shocking amount of damage. So we offer that for the record to show what can happen when you frack under a ditch in an ill-advised way. Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Messenger. We will now close the public hearing portion of our meeting for this case. Any discussions from the commissioners before we call for a motion? Is there a motion for the case?
Yes, I'll make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding that subject to certain conditions, the requested conditional use permit for the project alignment identified on Exhibit B contained in case CU-123-20 meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council approve the conditional use permit subject to the revised conditions provided at the beginning of this meeting.
I second.
Discussion? Ms. Mann, can we please call for a vote?
Commissioner Yost,
Yes.
Commissioner Kamak,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Amador,
Aye.
Chairman Popio.
Yes. The motion has passed, 5 yeses, 0 nos. Thank you all for your discussion and your time tonight for that. Moving on to the agenda. Will the city please introduce our next PUD case?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. The next case tonight is Z-962-20. Galloway and Company is requesting the Planning Commission review of a PUD concept schematic for future commercial development located at the southwest corner of Tower Road and East 81st Avenue. PIN number 1723284000003. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sure who is presenting this case on behalf of the city this evening.
I'm presenting tonight, Matt.
Oh, thank you. So this would be obviously your planning manager, Steve Timms. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you all so much, commissioners. Jessica, if you would pull up the PowerPoint, please. All right, thank you. So this is, as Mr. Hader alluded to, a concept schematic, PUD, first phase of a PUD process with the city. It's case number Z962-20, Quick Trip of the applicant, the location, the southwest corner of East 81st Avenue and Tower Road. And again, Galloway and Company is working on behalf of the applicant as well. Next slide, please. So, tonight we'll have some discussion with the commissioners and get some feedback from you all. This is for a future annexation and PUD zoning for just under 15 acres of land that's currently unincorporated. The applicant's proposing a minimum of 2 lots. Lot 1 would have a Quick Trip convenience store and fueling station. Lot 2, undefined at this time, determined as part of the PUD. Next slide, please. So just a reminder, for concept schematics, so there's no voting on these. This is just going to be some feedback that that the applicant is here, they can listen to, that staff will be here and listen to, and then they'll incorporate that as part of the PUD zone document, which is the full entitlement that Planning Commission will be voting on. So this is something that we've done. We did it with, if you remember, the prime size Legato piece just up the road there. We did that a little bit ago, and then we did Third Creek on the other side of E470. There was a concept schematic about, I don't know, maybe 12, 18 months ago as well. So next slide, please. So this is just the vicinity map of where we're looking at. So it's on, it's basically the most southern property before you hit the Denver line and the DIA line. And so the yellow line right there just designates what's in the city, what's in the county. But across the street, of course, you have the Canopy Airport parking. To the west, you have the USA Airport parking. That's unincorporated Adams County. And then 81st and north of that is part of the DIA Technology Campus that and Nexus North. That's all a lot of developments occurring right now. And then also I'll show on the western boundary is a tributary of Second Creek. That's where that kind of jagged line is. And so that runs, it connects with Second Creek, but then it runs into Denver to the south. Next slide, please. This is just showing on the comprehensive plan map, the site there, and again, in the bottom corner between Adams County and Denver County. It's classified as commercial uses in the comp plan. it's a good reminder, but that little dash line that you'll see, those are the DIA noise contours. And so this site is encumbered by that. And if you've ever flown out back when we could fly a lot more down to California or Las Vegas, and you might take off that east-west runway, you would go over this particular site. Next slide, please. This is just showing the entitled land uses that are occurring in the area. Again, there's commercial along Tower Road. There's some DIA technology in the gray there. And then you go further up by Tower Road and you start getting into more mixed use and residential, single family and multifamily. Next slide. So this is just showing, again, that it's surrounded by a couple of PUDs on the other side of Tower, and then just north of this as well. The USA Airport parking is actually a PUD in the county as well. Next slide, please. On their concept schematic document, again, they're calling out kind of this generic area for commercial uses, then with the drainage area to the west. Next slide. And then, and this is just showing, again, these access points aren't official, but it's just showing some conceptual layouts for how they could interact with the public rights of way. Next slide, please. So in terms of the land uses, they're proposing a combination of C2 and C3 uses. You'll see there, one of the big ones obviously is a fuel sales, but not with vehicle repair. They are talking about potentially up to 15 pump islands, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. They are proposing to exclude certain uses, and we would like some feedback from the commissioners on these, as well as anything that may be missing. But you see a list there that the applicant is proposing to exclude out of the normal C3 uses. And then we'll talk about this a little bit too on the coming up slides. There's some questions about the number of truck fuel stations or fuel islands. And currently a truck stop in our code is a conditional use in the I-1, I-2, and I-3 and ag zone districts only. So that's just for reference as well. Next slide, please. So this is a proposed site plan. Again, it's not the final one. They don't do a development permit at this stage, but kind of a concept plan. And you'll see Tower Road and 81st Avenue, but you'll see the main building there in the center is the convenience location. You'll see the row of pumps, and they're proposing at this time, they have 10 up there. And then in the back there, they're proposing 5 diesel pumping islands for semi trucks. And our code, if it was a straight zone district, we currently allow up to 5 fueling stations, or I'm sorry, fueling islands associated with a gas and convenience store. And obviously they're proposing a lot more than that. There is the opportunity sometimes on the 10 to double up. So you would kind of stack them in front of each other to get your 5 that way. That's a potential. There is a concern raised by the staff that it's a little heavy on the truck utilization. And while I know I've talked to the applicant and they would not call it a truck stop, I think they have the term travel center, and they can talk a little bit more about their vision. But there is a concern about perhaps the heavy emphasis on the trucks, especially at this key kind of gateway into Commerce City. So we'll want to hear from the commissioners on that. Next slide, please. So this is just we got it off the web. The applicant did not submit this, but Quick Trip is they have operations in different states that the applicant can talk to you about. I'm from Atlanta, and they're all over Atlanta there, but they do this type of high quality convenience store and fuel center. And here, just for reference, you'll see kind of those islands that they're kind of stacked behind each other. That's potentially a way to get more pumps available through our code as well. Next slide, please. So some comments, initial comments from the development review team. It does look like it potentially can meet the criteria for future PUD zoning and annexation. It does qualify for the comprehensive plan and future land use maps. We did receive some initial comments from some agencies. Obviously, they would be referred to and informed as part of the entitlement process as it goes forward. And at this time, there is no, other than the Quick Trip, there's no specific users identified for the rest of the property. Next slide, please. So again, some of the comments from the development review team, the truck intensive uses versus a traditional fuel station use, kind of that balance of what that looks like. Because this is literally and figuratively the first property that one could see as they enter into Commerce City. It certainly is a prominent location and a gateway to the city, and also the last property as you leave the city and enter into Denver. So the DRT was sensitive to that. We'd like to hear from the commissioners on that. And then the fuel pump islands we talked about. Again, our code normally allows 5. Potentially they can do more, but we want to hear from the commissioners on that. Next slide, please. Obviously, the next steps after this, if the applicant goes forward, there would be an annexation, a PUD rezoning. Those can be done concurrently with each other. Obviously, review by Planning Commission, ultimate decision by City Council. There would have to be some platting of lots, and then any type of PUD development plan or permit administrative approval for those. Next slide. So these will be some of the questions that we'll go through and see how you all feel. Again, the land uses, both the proposed and future, and their compatibility with the surrounding uses. And we can talk about those, or if we're missing some that you feel like should be included or are prohibited, we'll talk about that. The hybrid nature of the truck fueling versus a traditional automobile fuel station. Some deviations from the code about the pump islands, anything potentially extra heightened architecture for a prominent intersection. I'm sorry, there you go. One of the issues that's come up before is potentially for the other lot, maybe a hotel could go there. There's been interest in that corridor. The traditional zoning of a C3 allows, I think, a 50-foot max height. And for kind of hotels nowadays, that doesn't quite get you what they want. So there's been some initial conversations about potentially upping that height here at this location, maybe to 75 or even 100 feet to allow potentially up to an 8-story, 9-story, 10-story building, something like that. And then access conflicts, obviously those would have to follow the engineering standards and specifications and in terms of access and full movements, right in, right outs, et cetera. So next slide. I think that might have been our last one.
That was the last slide.
That's the last one. Okay. So with that, we can hear from the applicant first, or we can answer questions, or we can dive into the questions. Because this is not a public hearing, we do not open it up to the general public. However, the applicant does have a chance to answer questions and have dialogue as well.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I think let's hear from the applicant, and then we can ask questions.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, commissioners, thank you. My name is Mike Talcott. I'm real estate project manager for Quick Trip Corporation. I don't know if it's point of order, but 11724 Hannibal Street here in Commerce City. Moved here a year ago. Loving it so far.
Great. Thank you.
Just had to put that little dig in there.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. He did a very good job of covering this. I mean, this is a schematic plan. This is where you definitely are here to get your feedback, thoughts, recommendations. A few points that I would like to cover, and I'm sure there might be some follow-up questions, and I'm open to answering those the best of my ability. You know, he did bring up something about the truck use. You know, we've done our research in the area, and I know you guys all know, just like I do, as you know, being residents here, that there is a truck presence in that corridor. Actually, if you follow 81st Street back to the west, I lost count of how many dock doors. So that's part of what attracted us to it. Now, as far as the intensity of the truck use, you know, the truck stop definition that, you know, we all think of when we think of truck stop is not what Quick Trip is after. If you'll notice on the site plan, we don't have a football field, even though the site plan is not in detail right now. I realize we're not talking about that, but I want to explain our different philosophy. There is not a football field worth of parking for long-term overnight parking. also in our store, convenience store that we have a full service kitchen. We do not have eat-in dining. We also do not offer, as Steve pointed out, we don't offer service or repair or anything like that on any automobiles actually. But back to the truck stop use, we don't have laundry facilities. We don't have a trucker lounge or restaurant. We don't have showers. We just don't run that kind of operation. We do have in our store network, we have over 853 stores in 13 states, and luckily growing every day. We do have what we call travel centers. Now, those will be larger sites where potentially instead of the 5 acres that we're showing here, we would have parking for maybe 20 trucks, but it's not long-term, it's not overnight. Because once again, we don't offer those services that the long-haul truckers really need to stick around that long. This site is more of kind of an evolving model for us that we call a fuel stop. What we're looking to capture is some of that truck traffic that's traveling up and down the corridor and then even on 81st Street that literally need to jump in, top off their tank, and then get something to eat and then keep going. So that's the only delineation I would like to make on the truck focus of the site. Our main focus is really convenience, but then also the fuel sales and then the indoor sales that go along with it. Steve did bring up something about the canopy out front. I do have another site I'm working on in Commerce City that we are utilizing a double stack canopy. That's what we call it, a double stack, which does reduce the fuel islands. And that's just something that's a different definition from what I'm used to. Having them stacked, I understand, fits the intent of your code as an island or a row. And that's something that, this site plan is far from set or decided. So that's something I'd be happy to explore and see if we can't do that. Let's see. I really think that those are just the big points that I wanted to hit. I'm definitely open to any questions, comments, suggestions you guys have.
Mr. Talcott, when we talked about the number of fuel stations, is there in your mind a magic number? Does the development not work if it's above the 4 to 5 threshold? Is there, in your opinion, what is that?
Well, I do the entitlement process, and I have a counterpart that's a real estate manager and a director that actually look at the sites and decide what volumes we think they're going to run, and then size the fuel offer and parking lot size accordingly. As far as a magic number, I don't know that answer here. We typically as a chain, and I say chain, don't let me steer you wrong. We are family owned. The same family that started us 63 years ago still owns us. We typically don't do less than 8 fuel pumps for car service. Now, I guess one thing I did leave out on the diesel side, and this is something that had I not been doing the job that I'm doing, I would have never realized this, but we count diesel pumps as bays because in each one of those slots that a truck pulls into, one side is the part that actually has the brain, if it were, that keeps track of gallons and dollars. The other side is a slave because most trucks, and not just semis, but even smaller 25-foot straight trucks have tanks on either side. That allows them to put a pump in or a handle in on each side and fuel simultaneously.
Okay.
So I realize I didn't necessarily answer your question, but that's really the best of my ability. We are very fortunate to be very popular and very busy, and from that we like to have many pumps so people aren't waiting, aren't circling, and can get in and out.
Ms. Main, can you bring up the site plan again that you had on the presentation? How do we, and maybe Steve, you've thought about this too. Traffic, right? Tower Road, obviously, the speed limit on that, as we know, is obviously exceeded sometimes, but are we thinking no trucks are entering off Tower Road? Everybody has to enter off 81st to enter the site, especially from a...
Yeah, normally, as part of the actual zoning entitlement, we'll require a traffic study. And so that then will tell us exactly what type of traffic counts we're looking at and what percentage is going, you know, from the south, the north, where it's turning onto 81st, et cetera. So it's just very hypothetical right now, and we'll know more information at that full entitlement stage.
Mm-hmm.
Might someone be able to kind of talk about the accesses along 81st right there? It looks like we have 2 curb cuts to get off of 81st, and kind of walk us through the traffic flow that's anticipated right now in terms of accessing the pumps and whatnot, even if you just do it with your mouse. I mean, I know this is conceptual.
Do you guys have the ability to see my mouse or?
No.
No. Well, I'll do my best here. And once again, this is our best first concept based on what we think will function well. So if people turn off of Tower onto 81st, then the first access point that you'll run into is lined up with the access point across the street to the north, and that will be a full access. That's what I anticipate. Cars that are coming south on Tower would turn right on 81st and then left into the site, or they would also have the right in, right out on Tower Road. There would be the possibility for trucks to enter there as well, but that's why we have the next, planned north access point. What we find, and I'm sure you guys do in your own personal life, is as you frequent places, you start to get in a habit and figure out what works best. We anticipate that would be a left in that the trucks would make if they're coming off of Tower Road, because then they would have room to go past the canopy, turn around, and get in queue to fuel. And then when they pull out, they would have either one of those access points to take a right on 81st to continue back to Tower, or if they happen to be going left on 81st to one of the warehouses back there. So that's the 81st. Then Tower Road, right above the label that says Tower Road, that is proposed as a right in, right out. There's a median there. And that would just allow ingress and egress for people traveling south on Tower. The next access to the left is actually planned as a 3/4 access, and that's currently there. So that would allow people to either decide to turn left at 81st or turn left at that 3/4 access as they're traveling north on Tower Road. Does that help?
Yes, I'm just kind of thinking about where these big trucks, or I'm going to say campers themselves, that are pulling and they're trying to go into the convenience store. So are we saying that they're basically driving in, getting gas by I'm going to call it the number 5 right there? Is that where they're getting gas? I mean, it's so hard to understand what's going on.
Yeah. This is a very simplified drawing, but they would come in off of 81st. They would drive to the left, which is south, through the 5, if you were, and then do a U-turn to turn around and get in the queue to then be going to the right. That blue rectangle is where we have the diesel bays anticipated.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So that seems so counterintuitive from a traffic flow, how you would really get into a site to fuel up. I'm thinking of myself, long bed diesel along with long camper, and you're asking someone to come in and make a complete U-turn to try to get gas? Is that what you just said?
To get diesel fuel, yes. Like I said before, I mean, I'm definitely open to suggestions and feedback. And as we work through the site plan with staff, really nothing is off the table. This is something that is part of our preliminary site planning, though. We have done turning movements to make sure that the turning movement is possible and does work. We do have sites in existence